Hi guys, welcome to our channel. Here we share the experiences of people from around the world who have had near-death experiences. Please support us by sharing our videos and help spread awareness to your friends so they can appreciate the opportunities in life more. We hope this channel brings light, hope, and love to all of us. Thank you to everyone who supports us on this journey. One morning, I was running really late for work on base. My supervisor, who had a key to my dorm room, came in expecting to find me still asleep. Instead, she found me unconscious on the floor. As the doctors and nurses gathered around me, it felt like a scene from a movie or TV show. My vision started to blur and shift from left to right, making everything seem unreal. I heard a voice to my left say, "You're going to feel air travel up your arm. It's going to be really painful, but everything's going to be okay." I tried to look over to my left repeatedly, and when I finally managed to, I realized there was no one there. At that moment, I saw the screen flatline. Seeing myself flatline, I began to travel upwards. It was the best feeling I could ever imagine, a beautiful, blissful sensation with love surrounding my body. My name is Chase Skylar Dio, and I grew up in Orlando. I grew up in Florida, where my grandparents adopted me from the day I was born. My mother was too young to raise me. She was only 17. And my biological father had no interest in being involved. Fortunately, my grandparents had already adopted several other children, so I became part of a diverse family. I have 2 Korean sisters, a Korean brother, and a black brother. When you're young, you don't really think about the differences in your family until you start going to school. That's when people begin pointing out that you don't look like your siblings. Whenever we went out to eat, people would often ask, "What church are you with?" Because it didn't make sense to them that all these different-looking kids were part of the same family. We would pile out of a Tropic Traveler bus, if you remember those, and had a fantastic childhood together. In 7th grade, I had the opportunity to join an ROTC program, a middle school military program. I jumped at the chance and was one of the first volunteers. My grandfather had served in the military, and his service inspired me. My great-grandfather served in the Navy, and his service instilled in me a strong sense of duty. It was never a burden. Rather, I felt a deep excitement and calling to defend the country I loved. The moment I turned 17, I joined the Air Force. My dad, who served in the Army, insisted that if I was going to enlist and he was going to sign the paperwork, it had to be the Air Force. I think he was always a bit envious of how well the Air Force personnel were treated. As a parent, he wanted the best for me, so the Air Force it was. I enlisted as a CR, Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape instructor. The role of a SEER instructor involves mastering various terrains and training pilots on how to survive off the land in case of a mishap or accident. Not long into my training, I injured both of my knees in a training accident. It was like getting hurt in practice, kind of embarrassing. Both of my kneecaps ruptured and dislocated. The Air Force surgeon recommended a procedure called a lateral release to reset my kneecaps. Looking back, I probably could have rehabbed without surgery and continued in my original role, but at the time, the surgeon believed surgery was the best course of action. Unfortunately, the knee surgery wasn't successful. Up until that point, I had a clear vision for my life, 20 years in the military. But the knee injury shattered those goals and my future plans. It was catastrophic for me, and I didn't know what I was going to do next. I started to feel scared and nervous, and my friends were worried about me because it seemed like my life was caving in. This marked the beginning of a challenging new process, retirement. They told me my body was no longer fit for military service. The retirement process was long and difficult. During that time, my behavior became unprofessional. I was young and frustrated, and I knew I was going to be discharged, so I started showing up late to work. I figured, what could they do? Fire me? One morning, I was really late for work on base. My supervisor, who had a key to my dorm room, came in expecting to catch me sleeping. Instead, she found me unconscious on the floor. I was immediately taken to Langley Air Force Base Hospital, where they hooked me up to every machine possible and ran numerous tests to determine why I had collapsed. Despite all the blood work and tests, they couldn't find anything wrong with me. I was young and in the best shape of my life. There was no apparent reason for my unconsciousness. So, of course, the doctors looked into everything. Was I on drugs? Had I been drinking, or was it something else? But I had never touched drugs and still haven't. so they couldn't understand why I was unconscious. The nurse then said, "We're going to do a couple more tests, including a chest x-ray. If we can't find anything, we'll just send you back home. There's really no reason for you to stay here." As she fiddled with my IV and walked out of the room, everything changed. I heard alarms start going off, and it felt like something out of a movie or TV show. My vision began to blur and shift left to right, making everything seem unreal. Nurses and doctors started rushing in. My room was at the end of the hallway, so they were almost running into the wall as they hurried in. As the alarms blared and the doctors and nurses surrounded me, someone sat down to my left and began stroking my arm, reassuring me that everything would be okay. Amidst the chaos of the alarm and the frantic voices, I sensed their urgency and concern. Then the voice to my left said, "You're going to feel air traveling up your arm. It's going to be really painful, but everything's going to be okay." The pain that followed was indescribable. It felt like a silver bullet, massive and piercing, coursing through my arm. Each inch of its journey was agonizing, like a train hurtling towards my heart. I remember my right leg involuntarily kicking up in the air as the nurses and doctors hovered above me, their faces a blur amidst the pain and uncertainty. Despite the intense pain coursing up my arm, the calm voice to my left was oddly reassuring as it gently stroked my arm. As a military guy, having another man touch me in that way would have normally felt uncomfortable, but in that moment, it brought a strange sense of peace. The voice kept repeating, "It's going to be fine, it's going to be okay," amidst the chaos of nurses and doctors frantically shouting to each other. Even as the confusion and pain swirled around me, I could distinctly hear the calmness of the voice to my left. When I finally mustered the strength to turn and look, there was no one there. And then, in a surreal moment, I saw the screen flatline. As I witnessed my own flatline, a sensation of upward movement overtook me. It's difficult to put into words, but it was like everything in my body began to unfurl, like melting ice, releasing from my chest in a rush of light. It was the most incredible sensation, an overwhelming feeling of love enveloping me. Moving upward, I felt a profound sense of trust in the journey ahead. Before long, I found myself in a garden unlike anything I had ever seen. The colors were vibrant, the flowers and plants unfamiliar, yet stunningly beautiful. Everything seemed to glow with an intensity that made me squint, like staring into the sun. My childhood notion of heaven, where I imagined Elvis waiting for me in the clouds, paled in comparison to the vivid reality before me. There was no floating sensation. Instead, my body felt weightless, as if in zero gravity. Yet the garden and its foliage were so tangible, so real. Blue, but it just doesn't do it justice. Everything was so bright and vibrant, almost pulsating with energy. You felt completely in tune and connected with every aspect of the surroundings. When we admire a tree or a flower here on earth, we might comment on its beauty, but in heaven, it felt like I was experiencing the essence of the plants and flowers themselves. In earthly dreams, you might envision things, but you don't necessarily feel them. This was different. It was so real that I could feel the grains of dirt between my toes, quite a vivid memory considering I usually hate being barefoot. Ahead of me, I saw a man in a robe chasing after a little boy, around 3 or 4 years old, with curly blonde hair. The boy was giggling and darting ahead playfully, looking back at the man with mischief in his eyes. It was a heartwarming sight, like witnessing the bond between a father and his son unfold before my eyes. The little boy was brimming with joy, completely immersed in the pure delight of life. As I approached them, I couldn't help but notice the resemblance. I had forgotten I once had curly blonde hair, and that same infectious happiness that radiated from the child used to be a part of me. Growing up, I was always the cheerful kid, laughing and smiling regardless of the circumstances. But by the time I turned 19, life had become so serious. I was consumed by worries about my career, military service, and all the responsibilities that came with adulthood. I had lost touch with that carefree happiness. As I looked closer, I realized the man chasing the little boy was none other than Jesus himself. He didn't quite match the conventional image I had of him, no long, flowing blonde hair, but instead short brown hair, piercing green eyes, and a beaming grin. Yet there was no mistaking his presence. He exuded a sense of peace and vitality that was both comforting and awe-inspiring. In that moment, as sure as you know your left hand from your right, I knew it was Jesus standing before me. He was clad in a robe, but his presence was unmistakable. It was like looking in a mirror and recognizing yourself. As Jesus turned to me, it was as if he was conveying a profound message. This is what your life should be, spreading light, love, and laughter. It was a gentle reminder of something I had always known deep down, but had forgotten amidst the seriousness of life. At that time in the Air Force, I felt like my world was crumbling. Everything I had worked for and dreamed of seemed to be slipping away. But that conversation with Jesus was a wake-up call. It made me realize that I had been focusing on all the wrong things, career, money, material possessions, when true fulfillment comes from spreading joy and finding reasons to smile every day. I've since dedicated myself to spreading joy and making people smile, embodying the lesson I learned from that encounter, that life is meant to be filled with joy, laughter, and happiness. Time seemed to stand still as we stood there, lost in conversation. It could have been 5 minutes or 5 hours. Time was irrelevant in that moment of profound learning. It felt like a friendly reunion with an old friend, as if we had shared countless moments together in the past. Before I knew it, with a playful smile, Jesus remarked that it was time for me to return. I didn't resist. I understood that I had more to accomplish in this life. It was like saying goodbye to a friend you know you'll see again soon. There was no longing to stay. It was simply understood that I had a purpose to fulfill. And just like that, I found myself back in my body, in a different city off base, ready to continue my journey with a newfound understanding of life's true meaning. The Air Force had transferred me off base to a hospital in Hampton, Virginia, where I was pronounced dead. As I gradually regained consciousness, I initially thought it was just a vivid dream. But as I opened my eyes, I realized I was in a different room, surrounded by civilians instead of military personnel. The confusion was overwhelming. My body felt normal, with no pain in my chest, yet I knew something profound had happened. A nurse peeked in, looking startled, and quickly fetched a doctor. The doctor seemed at a loss for words, but eventually informed me that they would be sending me back to the Air Force, leaving me to face whatever consequences awaited. With a mix of disbelief and relief, I managed to call a friend and ask them to pick me up from the hospital. In a surreal turn of events, we found ourselves at Chick-fil-A, my hunger apparently unaffected by the ordeal. Feeling disoriented and in need of a change of scenery, I suggested we leave town for a few days. It was a strange and bewildering time, but I was grateful for the chance to step away from the familiar and process what had just occurred. After my unexpected return to consciousness, my friend and I decided to take a spontaneous trip to Washington, D.C. for a few days. We explored the monuments and snapped photos, trying to distract ourselves from the surreal events that had unfolded. Throughout our sightseeing, my left arm remained heavily bruised, a stark reminder of the trauma it had endured when the air traveled up to my heart. Concerned about the extent of the bruising, I returned to the hospital seeking answers. The medical staff documented the condition of my arm, noting that I had suffered from an air embolism, an occurrence where air travels up to the heart through an IV. It appeared that the nurse had accidentally allowed air into one of my main veins, resulting in the flatlining episode. Despite their documentation, the medical staff seemed as baffled as I was. Surviving a flatline was a rarity, and there was no clear explanation for why I had been able to do so. Unfortunately, there was never a candid conversation with the medical team about the specifics of what had transpired. The whole experience left me with unanswered questions and a lingering sense of uncertainty. After surviving the inexplicable experience, I struggled to make sense of it all. Although I yearned to share my story with others, I hesitated out of fear of being labeled as crazy. The concept of near-death experiences was entirely foreign to me at the time, and I didn't know how to navigate this newfound aspect of my life. So I kept my experience to myself, only confiding in those closest to me. By July 8, 2008, just a few months later, I found myself fully retired from the military. It was a turning point in my life. Suddenly, I was free to pursue anything and everything that had ever piqued my interest. Without hesitation, I dove headfirst into a whirlwind of new experiences. I joined a breakdancing club at a local university despite not being a student there. I dabbled in stand-up comedy, explored photography by capturing couples' special moments at weddings, and even became a ballroom dance instructor after learning the art myself. Each new endeavor was like a check mark on my bucket list, a testament to my determination to live life to the fullest. I found myself hosting contests with celebrities, appearing on television, and serving as an announcer for local baseball and hockey teams in Norfolk, Virginia, for a couple of years. It was all about embracing the things that brought me joy and spreading that light to others. Despite the urging to continue sharing laughter and love, I found myself succumbing to societal pressures to grow up and pursue a conventional career path. I landed a job at a corporate radio station, which provided financial stability and allowed me to secure a nice home. However, as the years passed, I couldn't shake the feeling of guilt. I realized I had become selfish, no longer spreading joy and creating memories for others. Feeling disconnected and unfulfilled, I embarked on a retreat organized by a veteran support organization. Over the course of 5 days, surrounded by fellow veterans, I explored unfamiliar practices like yoga and meditation, which had never been part of my macho persona before. Despite initial skepticism, the experience was transformative. Through meditation and introspection, I began to recognize the importance of prioritizing mental health and finding inner peace. It was a revelation, a stark contrast to the corporate world I had been immersed in. The retreat reignited my passion for spreading laughter and love, reminding me of the profound impact such connections can have on others' lives. Upon returning from the retreat, I felt an overwhelming sense of happiness, the happiest I had ever been. My wife immediately noticed the change in me, remarking on how relaxed and content I appeared compared to my previously stressed, corporate-focused self. Her observation sparked a profound internal shift. I began to question my purpose once again, reflecting on my near-death experience and the lessons I had learned. Through the practice of meditation, yoga, and breathing exercises, I found myself becoming more attuned to my surroundings. My mind was clearer, allowing me to tap into my intuition and empathize with others on a deeper level. It dawned on me that I possessed unique gifts and abilities, ones that I had perhaps overlooked or dismissed in the past. With this newfound clarity, I felt compelled to use my talents to help others. The journey of self-discovery had ignited a sense of purpose within me, driving me to make a positive impact in the world. I became acutely aware of the suffering of those around me, even strangers. It felt like a burden, a responsibility to alleviate their pain and bring positivity into their lives. If someone nearby was sad or struggling, I felt compelled to help them, to offer comfort and support in any way I could. It became my mission to spread light and healing wherever I went. When my grandmother fell ill and was hospitalized, I turned to prayer and the innate abilities I had discovered within myself. I would close my eyes, focus on my heart, and extend my hands outward, silently praying for her to experience a little less pain and suffering. Though I knew I couldn't completely heal her, I hoped to ease her discomfort even just a little. As I prayed, a strange sensation began to wash over me, a tingling warmth in the palms of my hands. It was a surreal moment, one that left me in awe of the power of faith and intention. I noticed prominent marks on both palms of my hands, a physical manifestation of the energy I felt when trying to alleviate others' pain. It was unsettling at first, prompting me to seek reassurance from my wife and trusted friends. They cautioned me against absorbing others' pain, emphasizing that it wasn't mine to bear. While my rational mind attempted to dismiss it as a mere allergic reaction, these sensations only occurred when I was earnestly trying to assist someone in need. Far from being painful, it was a tranquil experience, as if a subtle energy flowed through my hands. One particularly poignant moment occurred during a silent plane ride when I sensed a familiar presence, a gentle reminder from Jesus. He affirmed that I was on the right path but urged me to prioritize self-care. I learned that while offering support is noble, I must respect others' journeys and allow them to navigate their own pain. It was a profound realization, challenging me to strike a balance between compassion and personal well-being. It's been a challenging journey to reconcile my newfound abilities with the realization that I can't solve everyone's problems. I've come to understand that part of being human is experiencing both joy and pain, and it's not my place to constantly intervene in others' lives. I've had to learn to respect people's journeys and allow them to navigate their own struggles. Recently, I've been grappling with how to use my gifts without overstepping boundaries. It's a delicate balance, and I'm still figuring it out. But one thing is clear: the power of laughter and joy is transformative. It's a universal language that can bridge divides and bring people together. In a world that often feels divided, I'm reminded of the simple pleasures of laughter and connection. Driving past the bus stop where I spent my childhood, I'm flooded with memories of carefree laughter and play. It serves as a powerful reminder that amidst life's challenges, there's always room for joy and connection. It's disheartening to see how children today are often glued to their phones, missing out on the joy of genuine human connection. For me, laughter and closeness with others are essential ingredients for a fulfilling life. I believe that each of us has a unique purpose, and it doesn't always have to be grand or holy. Just like fingerprints, our goals and personalities are meant to be distinct. For me, that purpose involves a commitment to continual learning and growth. I strive to approach life with the same sense of wonder and curiosity that I had as a child. Back then, everything was an opportunity for discovery, unburdened by the constraints and stresses of adulthood. Now, I channel that youthful spirit into my education, pursuing degrees in alternative medicine and ministry. And I have no intention of stopping there. There's always more to learn and explore. I firmly believe that continuous learning is key to leaving the world in a better place. By drawing lessons from history and acknowledging past mistakes, we pave the way for progress and improvement. My grandmother's words resonate with me. Education truly has the power to heal our world. Education takes many forms, and it's important to recognize that it looks different for everyone. Whether it's formal schooling, reading books daily, or staying informed through the news, the goal is the same: to gain knowledge and insight that fosters growth and positive change. However, it's crucial that this learning doesn't simply add to our burdens, but instead empowers us to make meaningful contributions to society. In essence, the purpose of life lies in learning, evolving, and striving to leave our world better than we found it.